Okay, now we're going to mark down the center, and to do that I'm just going to take a piece of string, and I've marked the center on the stick, and I'm going to join the string to there, to the mark on the stick, and then pull it down, and there's another mark on the lower part of the stick to get a true mark, and then I'll follow down and mark the lower center and mark the true center where the sound hole will go. I'm going to take and measure down 5 inches from my joint where the top fits into the stick, and that will be the center for the sound hole vertically. Just recheck that, and then mark, leave a little cross mark for the sound hole, and I'm going to leave a centering mark for the center tab. Once we've got this, then I'm going to be cutting out the sound hole. Number of ways we can do that, but today what we're going to do is use a hole saw. We can use a hole saw, or we can use a Forstner bit, different type of bit, but the hole saw seems to work very well for this. And this is a hole saw, which is basically like a hacksaw or saw that's in a circular shape. This one is a 1-inch hole saw, and it's done with the drill motor just as the other would be. Now, since we have the center marked, we can find the center here and just start and go very slowly. And there it is. We've now drilled for the hole, the sound hole in the soundboard. It needs to be cleaned out a bit and run a piece of sandpaper or a file around the edge to clean it. And the first part, I'm just going to run our semi-circular rasp around it gently, knock off the bottom pieces. And then once again, we will take a piece of sandpaper and run it down and around. I have a piece of sandpaper that I can wrap around my finger, and I will put that into the hole and round and sand that hole round. And once again, the finish that you get is largely dependent on the amount of time that you have available to do this. There's nothing particularly skillful or needed to round it, but you do need to take time. Once we get this sound hole and we're happy with it, then we're going to glue on a little piece of wood on the bottom of the sound box. This piece of wood is there to keep the strings from biting deeply into the soft spruce, which is the wood that's used on the sound box itself. The next step we're going to do is to put a little block of oak on the tail of the instrument, and this is necessary to keep the strings from biting into the soundboard, which is a very soft wood. So it's just a protection of the strings. It also gives a little bit of strength to the bottom of the instrument as well. But this is where we will be putting in the holders for the strings. So the first thing we're going to do is just apply some glue again. Once again, we're going to stick with our Tight Bond 2, which is the commercial name, and make sure we've got enough glue, and hopefully we don't get too much glue, and give it just a minute, and then we're going to put it on. And because it's difficult to clamp, we're just going to use a piece of tape. So I just give that a minute or so to set up a little bit. I'm just going to fit it once and then take it off again to give it a chance to set. And one of the features of the Tight Bond 2 is it does tend to have a great deal of tack. It can be quite tacky, and it will hold itself fairly quickly on its own. Now I will use just a piece of masking tape and try and put some pressure on it to pull it in, and pull it in tight and make sure that it's seated properly. And it's one piece, and I'll just take one more piece of tape and go the other way. We can adjust the height later, but the side pull has to be done now, and I will put a few more pieces on to try and get it as tightly down to the wood as possible. Once more, the drying time till working time, so we can work again and do something else, will be about 30 minutes from now. And that will now sit there while we do other work. Now, one of the things that I noticed about this stick is that the distance from the top fret to the hole is a little bit too abrupt, so I'm going to bring that down. Just to protect the wood, I'm going to put a little piece of masking tape on it, and then I will take the coarse rasp and just bring that down. This could be done with a saw. There's many ways, but for our purposes here, I will use the rasp, and we'll work on it for just a few seconds here to bring it down close to where we want it. And then I will use the finer rasp to bring it down all the way. And that's about the right angle. Now I'll just take a finer rasp, basically smoothing that out. And then again, finer rasp or a coarser file, just to again smooth it and get it ready for sanding. Just rest that a little bit. And that would be ready for sanding. Now, one of the things to make it a little bit easier to use and to fit the hand better is to take the round off or square off the bottom of the neck. And to do that, we're going to use a simple scraper, and it will, when it's sharp, will bite very nicely. You'll see it pull the wood, much like the shavings look much like that of a sharp plane, but quite a bit easier to use. We're going to bring it down quite a ways, and then use the, once again, sand to get the final finish. But the first a good sharp scraper will give curls of wood, much like you'd see out of a sharp plane, and they will bring it down quite quickly, and it doesn't have quite the dust that sanding does. The surface is generally left in a very nice, smooth, clean cut. It ends up having less closure of the pores of the wood than it does with sandpaper. So once again, we scraped it down, and I think that's we can scrape and we can file and move, and change it to whatever shape you as the owner of the instrument would like and feels comfortable with. Remember, because we're going to use a very simple finish, if you want to revise your instrument in the future, that's possible as well. So once again, just a little scraping to round off the corners, and to be followed by later by the sandpaper, a little bit of sandpaper just to smooth off a few of the extra feelings. This scraper actually is now cutting much better with the grain than against the grain, which I was doing. That's it. We're continuing with the scraping, and we're going to try and bring the edge down a little bit here into the shape that I like. Each person with their own stick may well have a different shape that they like, and they can manage this very easily with the scraper. The scraper cuts fairly aggressively, but on the other hand, it doesn't cut so fast that you can't control what you're doing. There's a slight mark by one of the retaining nuts on the machine, and I just taking it off as well on the side here, so we don't have a mark to worry about. Okay, and now we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side, and I'll just clamp it so we can get at it. And once again, scraper biting in quite aggressively. And actually, scraping with the grain is much more efficient, but at the moment it's easier to keep it in one direction. So we'll do that. Reposition this slightly. And I'm going to again try to put a little bit of a shape onto the back, a shape that I prefer, that I like onto the back. And the shape will be felt by your hand when you're playing and guide you in your playing where you want to play. And continue to reposition slightly, and for this part I'm just going to hold it and try and bring the upper part back and down on a slight angle here to match the angle of the side. And once again, going with the grain a little bit better. The scraper is quite efficient and easy to use. Takes a little effort, but it's not hard at all. I'm going to just take a little bit more down at the upper part to give the, I'm going to thin the neck slightly at the top. Once again, this gives a little bit of guidance to where your fingers are when you're playing. And it leaves a very even surface. I find it easier to control on this type of work than a small plane or curved plane, or a curved plane or a rasp. And that's about it.